The first time I heard the scratching, I thought it was just the old house settling. That was my mistake. Old houses don't scratch back. I'm telling you this story because I need someone to know what really happened at 1247 Elm Street. The police report will say it was a gas leak. The insurance company will blame faulty wiring, but I was there. I know the truth. It started 3 weeks ago when I inherited my grandmother's house. She'd lived there for 60 years, never once mentioning anything unusual. But then again, my grandmother was the type of woman who'd smile through a tornado and offer the devil a cup of tea. The house looked normal enough from the outside. 2 stories, white picket fence, the kind of place where families should grow old together. But the moment I stepped inside, something felt wrong. The air was too thick, too still, like the house was holding its breath. I should have left then. God, I should have left. But I needed the money from selling it, so I decided to stay a few days to sort through her belongings. The first night was quiet. Too quiet. No creaking floorboards, no settling sounds, nothing. Just an oppressive silence that seemed to press against my eardrums. I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of scratching coming from inside the walls. Slow, deliberate scratches, like fingernails dragging across wood. I lay there listening, trying to convince myself it was mice or squirrels. But mice don't scratch in rhythm, and they don't stop the moment you get up to investigate. The scratching happened again the next night. Same time, same rhythm, but louder. And this time, it seemed to be moving. Starting in the walls of the living room, then traveling up to the second floor, following the path I'd taken to bed. By the third night, I was ready with a flashlight and a hammer. When the scratching started, I followed it. The sound led me to the basement door, a door my grandmother had always kept locked. I'd found the key in her jewelry box, an old brass thing that looked like it belonged in a Gothic novel. The basement was exactly what you'd expect from a house built in 1952. Stone walls, low ceiling, the smell of decades-old dampness. But there was something else down there. Something that made my skin crawl the moment I stepped off the last stair. The scratching was coming from the far wall, not from inside it, from behind it. And as I got closer, I realized the wall wasn't original to the house. The mortar was different, newer. Someone had bricked up a section of the basement. I should have called someone. A contractor, the police, anyone. Instead, I went to the garage and got my grandmother's sledgehammer. The first blow sent vibrations through my arms and a cloud of dust into the air. The second blow cracked the mortar. By the 5th blow, I'd made a hole big enough to shine my flashlight through. What I saw on the other side made me drop the hammer. It was a room. Small, maybe 6 feet by 8 feet, with scratch marks covering every inch of the walls. Deep gouges in the stone, some of them still dark with what looked like dried blood. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the skeleton sitting in the corner, its bony fingers still extended toward the wall it had been clawing at when it died. I stumbled backward, my heart hammering against my ribs. The flashlight beam wavered as my hands shook, casting dancing shadows across the scratched walls. That's when I noticed something that made my blood turn to ice. The scratches weren't random. They formed letters, words, a message carved into the stone by someone who'd been trapped down there, slowly dying in the dark. Help me. Please. Someone help me. And then, at the bottom, in fresher scratches that looked like they'd been made recently, she's coming back. I ran. I ran up those basement stairs faster than I'd ever moved in my life, slamming the door behind me and turning the lock. But as I stood there gasping in the kitchen, I heard something that made my knees buckle. The scratching had started again. But this time it wasn't coming from the basement, it was coming from upstairs, from my grandmother's bedroom, the room where she died peacefully in her sleep just 2 months ago. I grabbed my keys and headed for the front door, but it wouldn't open. The deadbolt was stuck, the handle wouldn't turn. The windows were painted shut, the back door was swollen in its frame. It was like the house didn't want me to leave. The scratching grew louder, more frantic. And then I heard something else. Footsteps, slow, shuffling footsteps moving across the floor above me. I called 911, but my phone had no signal. The landline was dead. I was trapped in that house with whatever was upstairs, and the scratching was getting closer. That's when I remembered what my grandmother used to say when I was little, and complained about monsters under my bed. "Don't worry, sweetheart," she'd whisper. "I'll keep them locked up tight where they can't hurt anyone." I thought she was talking about imaginary monsters. I was wrong. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. Each creak of the old wood sent a jolt of terror through my body. Whatever was up there was coming down, and I knew with absolute certainty that if it reached me, I would end up like the skeleton in the basement. But that's not the end of the story. That's just the beginning. Because what I discovered in that house, what my grandmother had been keeping locked away for 60 years, was something far worse than a single trapped soul. In part 2, I'll tell you about the others, the ones still scratching in the walls, the ones my grandmother fed to keep them quiet, and the reason why she chose me to inherit the house. Because it turns out, some family traditions are passed down whether you want them or not, and some secrets are too dangerous to die with their keepers. The scratching never stops. Even now, as I tell you this story, I can hear them in the walls, waiting, hungry, and they know I'm here.